Vermont Public, this is The Frequency. I'm Mary Angish, filling in for Mitch Wortlieb. It's Monday, March 4th. Here are today's headlines. Homelessness advocates had been bracing for hundreds of Vermonters to lose their rooms through the state's motel shelter program Friday. That's because of a new daily cap on the amount the state pays motels. Lawmakers approved the measure last week. Advocates worried many hotels and motels would abruptly drop out of the program, leaving the people they shelter out in the cold. But that widespread crisis appears to have been averted after a hectic few days of last-minute negotiations. Miranda Gray, with the Department for Children and Families, says the majority of hotels and motels have now agreed to the new rate.
No Vermonter is losing their hotel space because of the rate negotiation.
Governor Phil Scott says his administration still wants to scale back the program and is pushing for proposals to encourage more housing development and homeless shelters. State Health Commissioner Dr. Mark Levine says he thinks Vermont would benefit from overdose prevention centers. Governor Phil Scott, who appointed Levine in 2017, opposes the concept. But Levine told Vermont Public this week that allowing people to consume opioids under medical supervision can save lives.
And there's growing evidence that the ability of these facilities to provide many services is a positive benefit to the community that they're in.
Levine says overdose prevention centers are not a panacea and that they need to be part of a broader harm reduction strategy. Lawmakers are pursuing legislation this year that would fund the creation of the first overdose prevention centers in Vermont. Scott has indicated he'll veto the measure if it reaches his desk. A key House committee on Friday gave its approval to legislation primarily designed to strengthen the state's medical cannabis program. The program has seen a dramatic drop in patients ever since the legal retail marketplace opened in the fall of 2022. St. Albans Representative Mike McCarthy says this bill will ensure patient access to special products by allowing some retail stores to also be certified as medical dispensaries. But not everyone in the industry is happy with the legislation. Jeffrey Pizzatillo is executive director of the Vermont Growers Association.
This legislation largely misses the mark. Our sentiments and our priorities were not heard.
He says he's disappointed it doesn't address his group's top priorities, including permitting growers to sell their products directly to consumers and allowing public consumption of cannabis anywhere that tobacco is legal. Some state parks will be partially open during the total solar eclipse in April, but don't expect the usual experience. All amenities will be closed, except for limited parking and bathrooms. There will be porta potties on site, but visitors are expected to pack out their own trash. Caitlin Alford is Parks and Sales Manager at the State Park Service.
We're not actively encouraging people to go to parks for the eclipse. It's more so that we understand that people are looking for places to go. Inevitably, they're going to be there, so we're just trying to provide an opportunity for places that could be a good fit for people.
Alfred says there will likely be a staff member on site to help with parking and other complications. The Park Service advises people to avoid muddy trails, even if they aren't officially closed, and to pack food, water, and warm clothing, as temperatures may drop significantly during the eclipse. The list of partially open parks is available on the State Parks website. Coming up, we consider a Woodstock school bond vote and how it ties into school maintenance in Vermont at large. That's after this.
The Frequency is supported by MVP Healthcare, offering Medicare Advantage plans made for Vermont and guided by doctors. In partnership with the UVM Health Network. Info at uvmhealthadvantage.com.
Vermont's aging schools are in terrible shape. A recent survey of facilities found the state will need to spend at least $6.4 billion over the next 2 decades to make the necessary repairs. But as Vermont Public's Lola Deferred reports, in the absence of state and federal help, it's up to individual districts to ask voters to pony up.
There are no sprinklers at Woodstock Union High and Middle School, which serves about 450 students across 7 Upper Valley towns. But occasionally, it still rains from the ceiling.
So students were in a classroom and water started pouring down from a ceiling tile, and then the ceiling tile collapsed on the teacher's desk and computer. We had to move the students to the other end of the classroom because we had no other classroom for them to be in. And so Joe's team remediated that, but that happened in the middle of a class.
That's Sherry Souza, the superintendent of the Mountain View Supervisory Union, on a recent tour of the Woodstock School. And in the gym, which is housed in the oldest part of the building, dating back to 1958, the district's facility director, Joe Rogoli, nods upward.
If you look up and you see these beams here, this portion of the building would not pass code as far as like weight is concerned. And you can see, if we walk over here, from snow weight on this roof, you see these stress fractures up there on that wall. You see the cracks through the bricks there.
The building's woes don't end there. Over the years, Vermont's hard water has created such large mineral deposits in the plumbing that pipes 5 or 6 inches in diameter are choked down to an inch or so. And while the district's building crew does what it can, many of the pipes are encased in the building's cement foundation and so completely inaccessible. The system is perpetually on the brink of failure. Ben Ford is a member of the Mountain View School Board, and he recalled an incident from 2 years ago.
Yeah, you had a lot of people in the building, and you had all kinds of sewage backing up on the bathroom floors. That's a wonderful graduation night memory for one class.
Since 2016, the board has been at work on a massive project, a proposal to replace the nearly 70-year-old building with a modern facility that meets the district's educational and climate goals.
So we want to build a net zero ready facility, eliminate the 1.8 million pounds of carbon dioxide that the current building pumps into the atmosphere every year.
The result is on the ballot this town meeting day, a $99 million bond that would pay to build an entirely new middle and high school. It's a big ask. And while school officials and board members are confident the investment is worth it, even within the student body, there isn't consensus.
There's been some controversy in class about what direction we should go.
Steve Smith is a social studies teacher at the high school. And while it can sometimes be tough to get his students to understand the stakes involved in local elections, when it comes to this ballot item, they're highly engaged.
Students saying it's absolutely necessary, they can totally see it, and other students saying they hear that taxes are going to go up a lot, so they're not sure.
The timing of Woodstock's bond vote is difficult. Statewide, property taxes are forecast to increase close to 20% this year because of large jumps in education spending. That hike prompted lawmakers to take the unprecedented step of tweaking the state's education finance formula with just weeks to go until town meeting day. The idea was to get schools to revise their spending plans downward, which actually Woodstock did. But all of that anxiety and uncertainty has led several districts to postpone plans for major facilities work, fearing backlash from their voters. But in Woodstock, school officials like Superintendent Sherry Souza say that waiting will only cost more in the long run.
Each year, the project becomes more expensive. The cost is not going down year to year. And we know, and we've been told by our construction companies, that we can anticipate 5% whatever increase annually just for cost inflation. And so the project is not going to be less money in 3 years. It will only be more.
Crumbling schools are not unique to Vermont. A federal report in 2020 found that more than half of the country's public school districts require major overhauls. For years, school officials nationwide have been clamoring for a federal fix, and many states, including Vermont, have held off on making their own investments, hoping that the feds might come to the rescue. But Congress has shown no momentum on the matter. And back in Woodstock, Rogoli thinks that soon the state will have no choice but to get involved.
There's 300 and some odd other school buildings in the state of Vermont that are in the same situation that we are. There's some tough choices that got to be made. I think the state's going to have to step up one way or another, whether it be funding or, I hate to say it, closing more schools, but closing more schools.
And as it happens, state lawmakers in Montpelier are increasingly talking about doing both, funding school construction and also closing schools. In the wake of the Great Recession, Vermont suspended its school construction aid program. Now, many lawmakers, like Representative Peter Conlon, who chairs the Education Committee in the Vermont House, want to start it up again. And in some cases, they'd like to use state aid as a carrot to convince communities to consolidate their smaller schools.
We have to spend a lot of money anyway to really work on our crumbling infrastructure. But if we're going to be spending hundreds of millions of dollars on this, we have to make sure that these investments are smart investments, both for economies of scale, but more importantly, investments in high quality education.
But lawmakers don't anticipate restarting construction aid this year. At the very earliest, it'll be another year before that happens. Because doing so would be expensive, and so far lawmakers have been unwilling to name what tax or fee they'll raise to pay for it all. And until that happens, it'll be up to individual communities to decide if they're willing and able to pay a tab that the state and the feds have ducked for so long. Woodstock Union's 7-member towns vote this Tuesday. For Vermont Public, I'm Lola Deferred.
Thanks for listening to The Frequency today. We had additional reporting from Peter Hirschfeld, Bob Kinzel, and Corey Doxer. Our executive producer is Kevin Trevelyan, and our music is by Blue Dot Sessions. I'm Mary Engish. Talk to you later.
At a time when information continues to come at us faster and faster, sometimes you need to hit pause and rewind. NPR's Throughline takes you back in time to the source of the news stories filling your feed. Find NPR's Throughline wherever you get your podcasts.